you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances. You don't have to let what has been thrown at you keep you down.
How does this issue affect you personally? Either you live your life as a victim of your circumstances, which stops you from moving forward, or you make the choice to deal with your situations by putting them behind you and creating the life you want. Meet Jordan Mendoza, speaker, author, and founder of Blaze Your Own Trails Consulting Company, whereby he works with companies teaching them how to leverage their digital marketing and social media to attract their ideal clients. Yes, he had a tough time overcoming childhood and adulthood challenges on his journey to becoming who he is today. And each of his adversities helped shape him into the person he is now, and his commitment to making a difference in people's lives by helping them see things they don't see in themselves, by allowing them to blaze their own trails, spreading their wings, unshackled by their past. Welcome, Jordan Mendoza. I'm very honored that we could do this together.
Yeah, I'm excited for the opportunity.
So Jordan Mendoza is an author, speaker, and business coach. Jordan, I always start with this question. Tell us a little bit how you got started. We all have a bit of a backstory.
So I actually grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon, to be exact. And I was actually raised by a mom that was born with one lung. So she, was disabled. She eventually started to use oxygen. And so I was, in an environment with somebody who struggled, to live. And she had gotten sick a number of times when I was a kid. And, to kind of add insult to injury, I also had a stepdad who was an alcoholic. And, there was some abuse there, physical, verbal. He was in and out of jail, drunk all the time and breaking things and things like that. So, I really saw a woman that dealt with a lot. And so it really took a long time for me to even get to a point in my life where I realized that I actually went through a few things myself. I had some of my own adversity, and that's just because of how I saw her, suffer throughout her life. I was like, man, this is like, how does somebody deal with that, And so one of the things that I learned from my mom was, you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances. You don't have to let what has been thrown at you keep you down. And the way that she showed us that was she showed us a lot of love. She showed us kindness. She had a great sense of humor, and the way that her outlook on life did not reflect what her circumstances look like. And so when you're in an environment like that, although there were some tumultuous things, there was a lot of negative things, I still had a influence and a role model that showed me that I have a choice in how I deal with situations and how I take in information. And so that, she was definitely somebody that was a big inspiration to me. And when she was born in the 50s, the doctors basically told my grandmother, they said, she's not going to live past 18 and she's not going to be able to have any kids. And I'm proud to say that she had 5 boys and she ended up living to 54 years old. So she took the jokers that she was dealt and she literally made a full house, right? So she kind of took that negative thing and turned it into something positive.
I have found that a lot of people I have interviewed who have come from adversities, who have had to struggle and be challenged a good part of their life, always managed to grow up and become almost caretakers of the universe, being willing to step up and make a difference. I don't know if you've seen that or that's just my imagination.
No, I definitely think that, yeah, somebody that has been through something, right, something monumental, an adversity or a struggle or a pain, yeah, I definitely know just from working with even clients that those folks, they want to make a difference. They want to make an impact in some way. And that usually has to do with helping someone or something, right? Some cause or something like that for sure.
What was the pivotal point in your career that you chose to leave the business world to start your own business? And let's start with that.
Yeah, of course. So, I eventually stopped doing door-to-door sales. That was something I did for about 5 years, and I loved it. I love people. I love communicating with people. I love having conversations, building relationships, and I got this opportunity after we had moved up to the Washington D.C. area. I made a very hard call to my dad, who was up in Metro DC. He at that point had a landscaping business for a couple decades, and I said, "Hey, listen, can I come work for you?" Getting up at 6 a.m. and working from 6:30 until 6:30 p.m., doing landscaping 12 hours a day, providing for my new family. And during that time, this little thing called winter hit DC, and when winter hits, the grass does not grow anymore. And so I was now back to square one, where I needed an income source. I needed some revenue, and so I got a job with the window company, and I quickly realized that I'm not good with tape measure. Like, I'm not good at measuring stuff, and I did actually sell some windows, but I felt bad, and they probably didn't get installed right because of my lack of skills with measuring tape. But so I was in the leasing office at the apartment building, and the lady in the office said, "Hey, every time we see you, you have a smile on your face. You're always positive. Have you ever thought about doing leasing? We think you'd be great at it." And I said, "What's that? I don't know what leasing is." And so they, proceeded to explain, Terry, that, just like when you rented here, somebody gave you a tour, they showed you the place, you decided to fill out paperwork, you would be that person. And I said, "Do you have benefits?" Because about a week earlier, we went to the doctor for our son, who was just a handful of months old, and we spent 30 minutes waiting, put into another room for 20 minutes. The doctor saw us for five and gave us a $600 bill. And the math was not mathing. I wasn't making that much money. And so I said, "Do you have benefits?" Because I knew if they had benefits, I didn't care what they were paying. I was going to apply for this. I didn't care what the job was, because I need to provide for my family. And so they did have benefits, and I did apply. And that sparked a 15-year career in property management. So I went into an industry I had no clue about. I knew what apartments were. I'd lived in plenty of them, but had no clue about how the industry worked. And within 6 months, I got a promotion, which was exciting, more revenue for my family. I went from leasing professional to assistant manager, which honestly, it's not a good decision. You don't make your best sales guy a bookkeeper. Not a good idea. And so I hated that job, Terry. But guess what I did? I said, "You know what? I'm going to be the best dang assistant manager I can be." So I got promoted in 9 months, and I got awarded assistant manager of the year, which was great because I hated that job. And so to get that award was like a joke, because I just wanted to get past it so I could get my next job as a manager. And I did get promoted to manager, from hiring to manager, in 16 months. It was the fastest that the company had seen. And I went from being a guy that lived in the place to now managing multi-million-dollar building.
I identify with so much is it sounds like, Jordan, whatever came your way, you said, yes, of course, because that was what presented itself. That was the platform that showed up for you. And each time you didn't hesitate, because I'm sure there was a voice. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing there was a voice that said, "What are you, crazy? You don't know anything." But you said, yes, of course. And that's my story as well. It didn't matter what came up. I didn't know it. I said, yes, of course. And that's what I did with my first sales job. And that led me down a very, very successful path in the world of sales.
Right. I think there's always going to be excuses if we let them play out, right? But what's the worst that can happen? If you say yes, right? You could mess up, and that's fine. And I think that I've heard somebody say, I can't remember who this was, but it was pretty profound, and I think this will add value to anyone that listens to this episode. And it's that instability creates stability, not the other way around, right? And so you can't get comfortable by just being comfortable. You have to actually put yourself in uncomfortable situations, even though you don't know the outcome, because again, whether you go left or right, you're not going to ever know the outcome of the other of the other thing, but if you just put one foot in front of the other and, take that messy action, it's better than no action where you're just kind of standing still.
I'm so in agreement with you. And I say it's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable because that's where we are today.
100%.
You went from leasing to somewhere along the way, you realized that you want to make a difference in people's lives, creating change. That's why we're here.
Really how this happened, Terry, is I spent 5 years on site. Okay, so I got that promotion to manager. For 5 years, I was on site managing multi properties, managing single properties, lease ups, REITs, right? So kind of just getting a mix of all the different asset classes. And while I was managing a property, almost 600 units in Atlanta near Emory University, and my mom got sick. And so I was traveling back and forth from Atlanta to Portland, Oregon at the hospital, come back and forth, kind of being the one that the doctor responsibilities were kind of just forced onto my shoulders. I took on that responsibility and it was a lot and it was heavy. And within 3 months, my mom, passed away. And when that happened, I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was basically living in a fog. Like I remember waking up, I remember getting dressed, I remember getting in the car. I don't remember the drive from getting to the office, but I remember pulling in. I don't really remember a lot of the day, but I remember leaving and I remember portions of getting there and I remember pulling in. And it was just this cycle for about 6 months. If anyone's ever kind of felt like you're in a cloud, right? It was just like, I was depressed and I wasn't ready to admit it. And I didn't even realize it. And it was just kind of like the same day was just kept repeating itself. And so during that time, I wasn't performing at work. And so what happens in corporate when you don't perform, they have a meeting with you. And I remember sitting in my regional manager's office and all I heard was like, wah, 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 wah. I mean, she was talking, but I wasn't really retaining anything. And I walked out with a pay cut, a smaller property, less responsibility, and a demotion. And I was actually happy with it because it didn't really affect me. I was already dealing with pain and loss and grief and all the other things. And honestly, Terry, I can report to you now that it was probably one of the best things that happened in my career because I needed that change. I needed that different environment. I needed time to heal. And so because I got that time while I was at a smaller property with a new team, building new relationships, a new position in learning and development came up. And when I read that job description and it was all about helping people, it was all about helping people grow in their roles and really having a significant impact in the organization. Although I saw that, they highly suggest a college degree and I didn't have that. And they highly suggest all these years of experience and I didn't have that. But I said, you know what, let me go ahead and just apply for this, and I applied for it and it wasn't long, after, my mom had passed. And so it was tough, but, I said, let me go for this and ended up getting an interview and that interview turned into another interview and I ended up getting the job and I went from on site to corporate. And that, Terry, I did for 8 years in training and development. And over that 8 years, I feel like I got multiple degrees, right? Because I got certified in Myers-Briggs. I got certified in sales enablement as an advanced instructor. I was teaching leadership programs, helping coach individuals. And that's really where the shift started to happen for me when I started to really see the positive impact I was having on people in the leadership program because I was coaching people individually one-on-one. And when you hear people say, hey, you know what? Because of what you helped me with, my relationship's now better with my spouse. because of what you worked with me on, I now actually get along with this team member. I just started to see significant change. And when I actually looked around, I didn't get excited, or I didn't actually get like encouraged. I got a little defeated because I was realizing that I wasn't able to help as many people as I would like, right? When you're in corporate, in this program, we can only pick so many people. There's a budget. Okay. But outside of the context of corporate, I can help as many people as I want. And so that was kind of when a seed was planted that, you know what, maybe I can do this somewhere else, but I didn't immediately take action then. It was something that happened. It was kind of a deposit. And then it took a couple more years for me to eventually blaze my own trail and step out into helping other entrepreneurs all around the world.
Stay tuned. Jordan has a lot more to share with us. This episode is brought to you by Try Coaching. I'm Terry Yoffe, an international, 3-time certified executive business and communications coach. I love this quote from Confucius. What the superior man seeks is in himself. What the small man seeks is in others. If you are looking to create changes in your life, you must look within and change yourself first. If you're looking for others to help you create your changes, you're chasing a ghost. I know I created change within myself to become a better version of who I am, and I can help you do the same. Please reach out and let's start a conversation. So, bringing us up to date, Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting, which is your company. And that's the name of your podcast, Blaze Your Own Trail. What light bulb went off that you said, aha, blaze your own trail come to be?
Yeah, well, I've been around trailblazing all my life. And that's one of the reasons is I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and our hometown team is the Portland Trailblazers, and the reason why the team is called that is because of the trailblazers that blaze the Oregon Trail. Like Lewis and Clark, you have Chicago Way, have all these stories of people that have blazed trails. And so I've always resonated with trailblazing. And so when I was starting my podcast, I wanted to figure out, like, how do I incorporate the love for my hometown team, the love for trailblazing? How do I incorporate that into the name? And I was like, Blaze Your Own Trail. I was like, Blaze Your Own Trail podcast, can interview trailblazers and find out their journey to success. And then I can teach people things that they can do on the trail. Right. So, I mean, it was just something that I looked and I couldn't believe that no one else had picked it, for one, that it wasn't out there. And so when I was able to do that and then eventually go and blaze my own trail, I said that has to be the name of my company as well. Can't have the podcast and then not have the company. And what's exciting, Terry, is since then, over the last 4 years, I've added a 3D printing business, which is Blazing 3D Prints, and I've got an outsourcing agency, which is Blazed Outsourcing. So the portfolio has also grown as I've blazed the trail, if that makes sense.
You also work in digital marketing. Tell us exactly what you do today and how that has been incorporated into your whole program.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I'll say, Terry, is trailblazing isn't easy. When you're out on the trail and you're trying to figure things out, there's going to be rattlesnakes. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be weather. There's going to be things that happen, And so what I love to do when I'm working with individuals, when I'm working with companies, is really help them out. It's kind of like having, you got the cowboy out there that has the weapons, that has all the things that they need to make sure that you're not getting bit by a snake, or no one's going to, attack your stagecoach while you're coming down the road, right? And so when you can have somebody that can help out in your business with systems and processes, making things make sense, when you can have somebody that can help out maybe on a day where you're just not feeling like you putting out that post or that content, but can coach you and encourage you and guide you and say, hey, we need to do this. This is not a should we. It's like this has to be done, and you can have someone that's in your corner. That also is really helpful. And then when it comes to social media, I literally share with all my clients everything that I personally do and that I've done to grow audiences on 7 or 8 different platforms, a couple 100,000 people. And so what I like to do is really show and model that I'm a practitioner as well, because I think that's really important. And in this day and age, is that everyone, if you're going to coach or train somebody on something, you better do it yourself consistently. You better model that behavior. You better show them that, hey, look at me, right? Follow my lead, follow my example, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, and you can't blaze a trail in the shadows. You have to be visible. And so that's one of the things that I help my clients with, is getting more visibility, not less, because it's very easy in our society to have somebody scroll past you. And so if you're just think about it, if you're only on one communication channel and you get passed by, then there's less opportunity for you to be found. And so, that's one of the big things that we help with, is making sure that people's platforms are optimized, and they're dialed in so that they're not losing potential business. And then once those foundations are set in, it's having that, consistent strategy so that you can show up on a daily basis on the platforms, and then having a plan of action of, okay, what's that follow up? Because usually what I run into is most business owners, they've got maybe A and they've got B, but C and D may not just be dialed in. And so I kind of come in and take a 30,000-foot view of a business and say, hey, this is great. This is looking great. We need to install this to communicate here so that you can get this time back. Does that make sense? And so it's almost kind of like surgery in a sense, or even you can look at it like a game of chess, right? Where we're tactfully looking at each component of the business and seeing what area we actually need to focus on.
An amazing, amazing person as yourself and what you do, because this is a very different world of how you connect with people, how people see you than it used to be many years ago. And somebody has to really guide you. And Jordan Mendoza is that person. So I have you, audience, you do not see this, but behind Jordan is a poster. I do not have great eyesight. So I've been sitting here and I believe it says, blaze your own trail.
Yes.
With a picture of an eagle.
Yes.
Flying overhead.
Yeah. Do you want to know where I got that from?
Please.
Yeah. So when I was leaving corporate, it was probably one of the hardest calls that I had been on, with colleagues, because it was the call when I made the announcement that I was leaving. And there were some watery eyes and things like that. And I was just telling them, like, hey, thank you for all the years. Like, a lot of these people I'd worked with for over a decade. I was with the company 15 years. And so it was very hard. But a couple of weeks after I had left, I had received this framed picture that said blaze your own trail in the mail. And the reason why this is so significant, and with the eagle and everything, is while I was on that call, a colleague, Pablo, he shared with us the story of the eagle. And I'll give you guys the short version here. But basically, there was an eagle who was raised by chickens. It somehow got mixed up on a chicken farm. It walked with the chickens. It ate with the chickens. It mimicked like it was a chicken. And one day, the farmer, pulled the eagle aside and said, hey, it's time for you to, go out on your own. It's time for you to, spread your wings. You don't belong here. And so he, puts the eagle in the truck and drives up to the top of the mountains and brings the eagle up to the top of the cliff. And the eagle is looking over this kind of vast view of mountains, and eagle's like, nope, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm a chicken. And the farmer's like, no, you're not a chicken. You need to jump. Your destiny's out there. You need to truly spread your wings and fly. And he's like, no, just spread your wings. And so the eagle spreads his wings, and before he knew it, the farmer kind of nudges the eagle off the cliff, and eagle starts to fall, but eventually spreads his wings and flies off into the sunset. And so 2 weeks after I left, I've got this beautiful framed picture of the eagle leaving the cage. So it was pretty cool, and it's something that I will definitely cherish, and it kind of started the journey.
I would like to add before we wrap up that how many of us think we're chickens when we're really meant for so much more. Like the eagle, if we leave our metaphorically cage and start to spread our wings, what trails can we blaze? What can we do that we haven't done? We're too afraid. We stay in our cage, never leaving. What would it be like if you opened your mind, the cage, and let yourself soar and become who you are truly meant to be? Jordan Mendoza, I know you have a site that people can go to for some resources. Just tell us where they can reach you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can pretty much find me on any platform, whether that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and send me a message. Let me know that you heard me here on Terry's show, and I'd love to connect with you if there's any way I can add value to you all. Also, I gave Terry a resource. It's actually a 6-step roadmap to LinkedIn success. So hopefully she'll get that out to you as well, and hopefully that adds value to your journey on social media.
Give us the website. It's www.blazeyourowntrailconsulting.com.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, Blaze Your Own Trail, www.blazeyourowntrailconsulting.com. And you can find out everything about what I do there, learn more about the podcast as well, Blaze Your Own Trail. And always look forward to receiving feedback. And Terry, I want to just say I appreciate you for having me on the show. You do a great job as a host, and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you. And folks, remember the story of the chicken and the eagle, and we can all blaze our own trails. Jordan has done it with his struggles, his journey. I've done it with my journey. We can all be so much more than what we are today. Jordan Mendoza, thank you so much for being here. It's really been a pleasure hearing your story.
My pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
As a recap, Jordan's compelling and extraordinary conversation has offered you thoughts on how you can create changes in your own life. Reviews encourage people to listen to my podcasts. If you loved what you heard, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review. For related content on extraordinary work, please visit my website, trycoaching.com. Meet Dr. Yasmin Saeed, named one of 3 top psychologists in New York City for several years running. USA Today describes her as a visionary who revolutionizes mental health. As the founder of Madison Park Psychological Services, she leads a top-tier team of psychologists, and her company is celebrated in Inc.'s 5,000 2024 list as one of the fastest-growing companies shaping the future. This is an episode you truly won't want to miss, and I am honored to have her on my podcast.